Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of A Weekly Waypoint. Today we are playing GTA 2, the most overlooked game I think in the entire series, and one that I have a lot of fondness for. As we have already established, I played these games when I was little, and therefore I am very old. As of the time of recording, last week's Weekly Waypoint has 3 views. I don't know why. It was either snubbed by the algorithm or people saw a screenshot from GTA 1 and went, I ain't watching that. In which case this one will surely share a similar fate. But all the same, I wanted to go back and play through this again, or not through it, but play a little bit of it again and remember it for what it was. And sure enough, all of the sound effects and the way the game plays and all that stuff fills me with nostalgia. Give me a wallet, help! All of that stuff. Now, of course, we have already played GTA 3, Vice City, San Andreas 4 and 5, so this does kind of bring us to the end of this a little bit weirdly structured retrospective. There's still a few games we could explore, but I might save them for a future date. We'll see how I feel next week. All the same, in the later games, GTA 3 on onwards, we were being a taxi driver the entire time. You can actually collect fares in this game, but for some reason nobody wanted to get in my cab this time around. I did test this a few days ago and it did work, so I don't know what I'm doing wrong here. But all the same, we cannot fulfill our fantasy of being a law-abiding taxi driver, and as you can see, unfortunately the man kept us down and drove me to the depths of rage and insanity, and it wasn't long before we ran into some problems. Now, I think GTA 2 is an interesting game in the series because it's the only one that's technically been set in the future, I believe. I did look up confirmation on this and I couldn't quite find like a year in which this game is supposed to take place, but it is described as taking place in a retro-futuristic city called Avalon, which is never brought up again. But if you're wondering why this game looks weird, why the car designs are weird, it's because they were going for an aesthetic. And nostalgia aside, I'm not sure they managed to hit it, because I don't know if this really looks retro-futuristic to me. It just kind of looks unique and weird. Kind of interesting. I mean, maybe they were going for kind of a RoboCop look. If I'm looking at the design of that policeman at the top there, I don't know. I'm not very well versed in RoboCop, I'm afraid. All the same, what I love GTA 2 for, well, first of all, they fixed the camera. If you have seen footage of GTA 1, you'll see the camera constantly zooming in and out whenever you're going faster or slower in a vehicle, to the point where it's very disorienting. There's still a little bit of that, I guess, when you go really fast in this game, but they've made it manageable. They've made it, so it's not, super shaky camera and all that stuff. But what I loved about GTA 2 as a kid was there were just so many new areas to explore. There was a lot more verticality, I guess, in terms of, like, you could go up on bridges and stuff like that. I think, I don't know, I think GTA 1 might have had a few. I don't think it did. I don't remember anymore. But I know that this game had a lot more alleyways to explore, a lot more places to explore on foot, I suppose. And I don't think that's the kind of thing that would keep my adult mind all that interested or occupied, but as a kid who spent hours just exploring this map, it was a fantastic time. But yeah, ultimately I suppose there's not all that much to say about GTA 2, so without further ado, shall we talk about games I played and news which happened, I suppose, this week. There's plenty of that to talk about, because the Switch 2 got revealed, and I know, Nintendo-related channels have already dissected what little information they gave us to death. Don't worry, I'm not necessarily going to be doing that. The Switch 2 exists, and by some crazy coincidence, it just happens to look exactly like all of those things that were leaked about it that definitely were not true. Please don't look at them. It looks bigger, doesn't it? Looks like we'll be able to use the Joy-Con as mice, which is interesting. John Cartwright of Good Vibes Gaming pointed out that perhaps mouse functionality would help incorporate DS emulation to the console, because they probably wouldn't like to only have an emulation mode available in handheld mode. Probably wouldn't be the ideal way of playing, but it would be a way of playing. But yeah, as far as the Switch 2 goes, all of my curiosity about it kind of is yet to be, validated or revealed, because they basically said, yep, here it is. Everything you kind of already know about it has been made official, but come back on April 2nd and we'll tell you more about it. And I'm like, April 2nd? That's so far away! As I say this, I'm just now realizing I did upload a Switch 2 reaction video to the channel, so there's that if you want to go see it as well. But, yes, I don't really need to repeat things that I said in that video. Mario Kart 9 exists and looks cool. The tyres are puffy. Mario's cute. They redesigned Donkey Kong, so on and so forth. I basically don't think I have all that much to say about the Switch 2 until whatever they reveal on April 2nd, if I'm being honest. Some people are clamoring for a new Animal Crossing game, which could be cool. Honestly, I'm not sure what direction they could take it in, which would really interest me. Considering New Horizons came out, I do like New Horizons, but it felt like it lost a little bit of what I loved about Animal Crossing in the past. Kind of intangible and hard to quantify. So I would probably just be happier if they, you know, remastered City Folk or something. But on the same day as the Switch 2 trailer, we also got a new trailer for Bleach Rebirth of Souls, which, if you're not aware, is, I would say, a fighting game. People more well-versed with the fighting genre might say a character action game. I don't know the difference. But basically one of those games in which you can play through the story. They've confirmed from the Substitute Shinigami arc, which is kind of the start of the story, all the way up to the end of the Arankar arc, which is arguably, according to some fans, depending on who you listen to, all of Bleach being good, although some people would say it ended at Soul Society, but, you know, whatever. They also said that there will be side stories and, like, you know, you can see the story from other characters' point of view and that kind of thing, which I think is super cool. I'm really excited for this game. The only thing that I'm a little apprehensive about is I'm not very good at those games. I don't really play them. I don't know how much I will enjoy the actual gameplay itself. The only games I've ever played like it are the Naruto Ultimate Ninja Storm series, and I'm basically hoping that this is that for Bleach because I really enjoyed those games. They did also announce a season pass with characters from Thousand Year Blood War making an appearance, and I think unfortunately the way it was worded, some people are expecting a story expansion for Thousand Year Blood War alongside that. I don't think we're getting that. I think they're probably saving that for a potential sequel, although that potential sequel would be awkward because assumedly it would start with the Fullbringer arc, and that is everyone's least favourite arc. I wonder if they would just skip it. Maybe they will do the Fullbringer arc as a story expansion DLC that's yet to be announced. I don't know. Anyway, that overview trailer got me properly excited for that game. I was already excited, but now I'm properly excited for it. We also got a trailer for Daredevil Born Again, and it looks really continuative, which I think is a word, to the original Netflix series, and it's got me so excited for it. I don't think I've been this excited for a Marvel MCU property since probably Spider-Man No Way Home, or maybe the second Spider-Verse movie, depending on which came out first, but that's not MCU technically. And of course Morbius, who could forget? No, but anyway, I don't rewatch things much these days just because we have such a goddamn abundance of new stories to go and experience, and a limited lifetime in which to view them all, or read them all, or play them all, or whichever. So I don't very often go back and rewatch things, but I have decided to go back and rewatch series 1 to 3 of Daredevil, and I don't regret it in the least bit. I'm enjoying it probably just as much as I did when it first came out. In fact, it's my first rewatch, so it's probably been about 10 years since I last watched this stuff, and I don't remember a lot of it. But of course, the great thing about experiencing a story for the second time is that you do know where the story is going to end up going, and therefore you get to see it through new eyes and appreciate it for, like, how it was made, or like what they were doing with certain scenarios and that kind of thing. I've said this many times before, while I might not go back to stories a second time very often, I do advocate for doing so because I believe that the best stories are worth experiencing twice because you get to see it from another perspective. And indeed, the very best stories, the ones that affect you the most, are worth experiencing multiple times because every time you go back to them, you are a different person at some stage in your life. Your perspective on life may have shifted, you may have experienced new things, and therefore re-experiencing that story is a new experience in itself. I just get paranoid about not being able to get to everything I want to get to within my lifetime, that's all. But anyway, all this to say, yeah, I'm rewatching Daredevil, and it's still really fucking good. I actually have read, speaking of like re-experiencing stories with a new context, I've read a bunch of Daredevil comics now. I've read almost the entirety of Daredevil Volume 2, which is basically, I believe, around the 90s era of comics, and that is an absolutely fantastic read. If you're looking to get into comics, if you've got Marvel Unlimited or you're considering getting it and you like Daredevil, read Daredevil Volume 2. It is almost fire all the way through. I don't think the story that they're adapting for Born Again is part of Volume 2, but I might be wrong. I think it's a little earlier though. But yeah, for once in my life I did not get OCD about it and go, I've got to read it from issue 1 from the very start. I actually just let myself read it from a recommended starting point and really enjoyed it for it. But yeah, the Daredevil Born Again show looks really, really promising and I'm super excited for it, and I'm definitely going to rewatch Daredevil in time for that, and maybe watch Echo as well, because she's part of that same kind of universe, or that corner of that universe. I don't think Daredevil shows up in it that I've heard or anything like that, but might be worth a watch anyway, considering who Echo is. But anyway, in terms of games I've been playing this week, I got the Diablo itch, but not an itch for Diablo itself, if you know what I mean. Though technically I did play a Diablo game this week. They added Diablo 1 to Game Pass, and I had a poke around in there, and boy has that game aged! But at the same time, it's one of those games that you can go back and be like, oh wow, they were doing this with the very first iteration of a game. That's kind of cool. I think my favourite thing about Diablo 1 is that when you install it, you can go rummaging around the installed files and find the manual in there. And back in those days, manuals were kind of, you could put a whole bunch of lore in there. Nowadays we sell books full of lore, but this manual has a bunch of super early written Diablo lore and some cool art and stuff in it, so it's worth looking at the PDF if nothing else. But what I was actually going to say is I got the Diablo style game itch, probably because Josh Strivehays is playing Path of Exile 2, and whenever I watch a clip from his stream I see him playing that and I go, I want to play one of these types of games. For the record, I've tried Path of Exile 1 4 separate times, and every single time I have bounced off of it within the first hour. There is something fundamental about how that game plays which is not for me, and I cannot put my finger on it, but I just can't. I do want to try Path of Exile 2 when it becomes free to play to see if whatever the problem was has been fixed. But no, first of all I decided to fire up Titan Quest because I own a bunch of isometric ARPGs that I've not really put that much time into, and Titan Quest is one of those. Titan Quest is a 2006 video game, except the anniversary edition came out 10 years later, which is one I'm playing. And it puts you in Greek mythology, so it's actually a rare isometric ARPG which does not have kind of grimdark vibes to it, or gothic, I guess, visuals. And I played, I would say, about 3 hours of Titan Quest, which sounds like not a lot, but it felt like a decent amount while I was doing it. And I really enjoyed my time in it, and I've messaged Reese and been like, hey, you own this game too, do you want to play Titan Quest together sometime? So we're going to do that. But 3 hours doesn't sound like a lot. It might sound like I got distracted by a different game, and I did, because I was looking at reviews for Titan Quest to see kind of like, if anyone was saying, oh, this game's great, but you better make sure you do this or else you're not going to have a good time, etc. And I saw that the developers had made a different ARPG called Grim Dawn 10 years later. And I went, oh yeah, I've played Grim Dawn. I played 2.5 hours of Grim Dawn back in 2017, and I wrote it off pretty quickly. There was nothing outright wrong with it, I don't remember why, it was 2017, but I think I just thought it was like budget Diablo free. But I checked on Grim Dawn's Steam page and I discovered something a little bit shocking. Grim Dawn is still actively being updated in 2025, and I say 2025 because they do like weekly developer blog posts or something, and it has a thriving player base who love that game, and I went, oh, Grim Dawn is not what I thought it was. I thought it was like this budget Diablo 3 knockoff that was kind of fun to play, probably for like a single playthrough, and probably hadn't been touched since 2016. I was wrong! So I fired up Grim Dawn and have been giving that another shot, and you know what? Grim Dawn's bloody great. I can see why I put it down, because it does initially have budget Diablo 3 vibes. The voice acting is questionable, the animation and the story it feels a little rough around the edges, I guess I should say. But when you get into it, when you play the game, it has so many fun ideas of its own, like the ability to actually rebuild settlements as you go along, like a faction system with perks and things as you level them up. And its class system, I think, is kind of an iteration on Titan Quests, where you basically choose 2 classes and they kind of combine, and therefore there are like dozens of different class combinations and stuff. But ultimately, the main thing I want to say is it just feels good to play. And I won't lie, it does still have Diablo 3 vibes in terms of raw gameplay. I mean, it is an isometric RPG that was made in like 2016 after all. But as someone who loves Diablo 3 and is sick to death of Diablo 3, maybe this is the game I need right now. Because Diablo 4, as we've talked about before, isn't quite Diablo 3 enough for me, it turns out. I do like Diablo 4, but I don't love it like I love Diablo 3. But yeah, Grim Dawn, it has the right feel, it has the right vibes, and I'm going to keep playing it, and yeah, if I get to the end of a campaign without getting distracted by a different game, I'll probably buy the DLC expansion packs for it and stuff, and I'm really glad this game exists, and I decided to give it another shot. I am playing a Spellbreaker, which is a combination of, I believe, an occultist and a Nightblade. I'll be honest, I do kind of regret choosing Nightblade for my second class now, because it is more roguey, I think, but I've been looking things up and people say you can basically make any class combination work, so it's fine. Character progression in that game feels really good in terms of you level up and you set your attribute points and you put points into your skills or your classes themselves, so like you boost your stats and stuff in doing so, and then you can find shrines in the world and you can put those points that you get from cleansing the shrines into like different kind of constellations, a little bit like ESO, if you know what I mean. And it's a really nice complement to just the gear progression you'll find in any Diablo style ISO ARPG. So yeah, if you weren't aware, if you've heard of Grim Dawn and you kind of wrote it off like I did, turns out still alive and kicking and very much worth checking out. We might use it for weekly waypoint footage next week, I'm not sure yet though. Another game I've been playing, as you may have already seen, is Pokemon Violet. And you may have already seen that because I've been streaming through it. I won't lie, my love of Pokemon TCG Pocket has reinvigorated my love of Pokemon as a whole, and I've been trying to figure out which mainline game I want to play. You may have already seen I put out a video of me playing Pokemon Alpha Sapphire. I do want to continue that playthrough, but ultimately it got me to thinking. I think both this and the Switch 2 got me to thinking about Pokemon Violet again, because I got that game when it came out in 2022, and I'm sure I mentioned it on the Weekly Waypoint back then and probably on social media several times since, but I could not stand the way that game performed and looked, and I just gave up on it. I think part of me was also holding out for optimization patches, which of course never came, but that itch to play a Pokemon game wouldn't go away, and I thought, you know, I have the latest Pokemon game that for the most part I have not played, so I thought, you know what? I also discovered that streaming Pokemon is really fun when we went back and revisited like Pokemon Sword in a stream the other day. So I said, I am going to live stream a second attempt at this game because, you know, I've also said a lot in the past about how making videos out of my RPG playthroughs can burn me out on those RPGs, I think, a lot quicker because I'm re-experiencing the story several times as I go through the footage. And also, I don't think I've tried live streaming an RPG really before, at least not one that's not an MMO or something. And even then, usually it's me trying to stream something that I've already played through once, and therefore the possibility for burnout is higher, and I'm not going to be as engaged with the story because I already know it, etc, 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 etc. And I've basically been having a fantastic time streaming through Pokemon Violet. I've only done 2 streams so far. I might do a third today. It might have already happened by the time this video comes out. I don't know. But yes, everything that's wrong with Pokemon Violet is still wrong with Pokemon Violet. It looks like ass, it plays like ass, but it also has a lot of really fun ideas beyond just the open world, which I think is kind of flawed in execution. I think the whole idea of like a Terra type and what they did with like the raid dens is really legitimately very cool. So yeah, I'm kind of putting all my criticisms of how the game looks and runs to the side, and I'm just letting myself play the Pokemon game, and I'm having a good time. So keep an eye out for those streams. There are VODs on the channel of the previous ones if you are curious, and I'm hoping to continue playing through it. Another thing I've been doing this week is playing Power Washing Simulator for 2 different reasons. The first reason is I'm playing it with friends, and it is a perfect game to turn your brain off and have a yap. The second reason is I'm playing it while listening to Into the TARDIS, the Doctor Who Big Finish audio drama podcast. You may have already seen my thoughts on extended Doctor Who media video. We've got to find a better name for that. But yeah, I was listening to that quite regularly through the first half of last year, and then I just kind of fell off. Like, I fall off everything all of the time. I don't need to explain this every time. But I decided to get back into it, and it turns out Power Washing Simulator is the perfect accompaniment to an audio drama. But you know what? I think that just about covers everything that's going on with me this week, apart from this cold, which you can probably hear in my voice. Apologies. So I'm going to bid you adieu, and we can reconvene next week. I hope you have a great day, and I will catch you next time.